All right, ladies and gentlemen, you are Locked On Falcons. I'm your host, Aaron Freeman, and today I'm joined by Jarvis Davis, the co-host of the ATL Day Ones podcast on the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast feed. And today we're going to take a deep dive into what exactly is at stake for the Atlanta Falcons heading into this 2022 NFL Draft.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
So, guys, you know me. I'm Aaron Freeman. Been covering the Falcons for many years, formerly at FalcFans.com. RIP, still going strong on Twitter at FalcFans. And, of course, the host of this preeminent Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. And right here as part of the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast family. And I want to thank everyone that makes Locked On Falcons their first listen. Of course, it's free and available Monday through Friday on a variety of podcast platforms, including Apple, Odyssey, Google, Spotify, and of course on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Falcons YouTube channel, and you will get the video version of the podcast the night before the audio drops. So I am here once again, joined by Jarvis Davis of the ATL Day Ones, one of the three shows that you guys can find on the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast feed covering all of Atlanta sports. But today, Jarvis is going to be with me here talking about the Atlanta Falcons and what they need to do in this upcoming draft. Jarvis, welcome back to the show.
Man, thanks for having me. I'm truly excited to get on here and talk about the Falcons and what they're going to do and how they're going to disappoint us. I'm ready, man.
that is this life, right?
Yeah, that's this life, man. We got to embrace it, baby.
Anytime you try to get out, they pull you right back in, right?
Yeah, suck you right back in, man. My pops told me about this team a long time ago, and I ain't want to listen, but hey, man, I'm in there, man. I'm in there for the long haul.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about what's at stake for this team, because I think a lot of this regime's future success kind of rides on this draft. And I have a little bit of a preamble before I get to the question, Jarvis, but I look at the Falcons have 5 top 100 picks this year. The last 2 drafts that they've had 5 or more top 100 picks came in 2008 and 1997. Interesting enough, 97 was the first year of Dan Reeves' tenure. 08 was the first year of Mike Smith's tenure. And that 08 draft, the Falcons drafted Matt Ryan, Sam Baker in round 1. They took Curtis Lofton in round 2, Shevis Jackson, Harry Douglas, and Thomas Deku in round 3. In that 97 draft, it was Michael Booker in round 1, Nathan Davis and Byron Hanspard in rounds 2, OJ Santiago in round 3, and then in round 4, they got Henri Crockett, still with a top 100 pick because they didn't have as many picks back then. And I look at those 2 draft hauls, and I look at that 08 one. Obviously, you get the big pick in Matt Ryan at the quarterback position. Getting that pick right certainly was critical to that team's success. But I kind of look at the rest of those picks, and while none of those guys are superstars, several of those guys wound up being solid starters for the Falcons for the better part of 3, 4, 5 more years. And I contrast that with that 97 class. Booker didn't really work out. Nate Davis, I think, quit football after one season. Byron Hanspard injured his knee after one season. It was never the same. And so you look at that draft haul, and it's basically a couple of years of OJ Santiago as a starter until he was ultimately upgraded by Algie Crumpler a couple of years later, and Henri Crockett giving you like maybe 4 or 5 years as a starter. And I don't think it's a coincidence that you look at those 2 teams, and that 97 team, even though they went to the Super Bowl in 1998, they were not able to sustain that success, while that 08 team was able to sustain their success and have 5 consecutive winning seasons. So with that all being said, Jarvis, get to the question I want to offer you. Do you feel like this year's 2021 or 2022 draft will have that sort of importance for this regime currently? And do they have to absolutely nail this draft in order to have that sort of sustainable success similar to what we saw with that 08 team?
Let me say this, before I answer, let me give you like a quick caveat. If Terry Fontenot wants to establish himself as the general manager of this team and give people a reason to believe that he's going to be around for some time, the answer to that question, the short answer is yes. Like, this needs to be a franchise changing type draft. And the one that is, like I said, it's no coincidence that you said the '08 draft, right? Because they were able to get their franchise quarterback. Like I said, they drafted some guys like I said, they weren't superstars, but those guys were solid contributors, to this team and helped them, get to the point where they were respectable around the NFL, because they got their franchise changing quarterback and they got some guys who can come in and play right away. So I think that I look at 2008 draft and the 2016 draft as franchise changing type drafts, and I believe that Terry Fontenot needs to have one this year because I give him a little pass because for last year, the 2021 draft, I give him a little pass for that. I mean, because you got Kyle Pitts, who was solid, who looks like he's going to be a really good player. You don't necessarily know what you're getting out of Richie Grant, who you got in the second round. Jalen Mayfield, that doesn't look good, So I think you take Taquan Graham. What is he going to get out of him? I like what I saw in Ade Ogundeji. I think he can be a solid rotational guy, but I don't necessarily look at him as a starter. And if he becomes a solid rotational guy, that's what you look for in the fifth round, when you're looking at where you get those guys in the round like that. So I believe that this is the draft that Terry Fontenot has to get his guy, the guy that's going to come in and have an effect on this team and establish himself as a guy who's going to be around for quite some time. Because you can look at a guy like Chris Lindstrom and say, okay, yeah, he's going to re-up for a second contract. But on the other side of that, you look at Caleb McGarry, he's a guy that everybody knows more than likely he's not going to be around for a second contract. And you ask Terry Fontenot as a general manager of his team, he needs to start drafting guys like Chris Lindstrom, guys we can look at and say, you know what? He's going to be around for a little while.
Yeah. And I want to get Jarvis's thoughts on some of the players that he would like to see the Falcons add with some of these top 100 picks, or at least maybe the positions he would like to see them sort of check off, regardless of maybe who the specific player is. And we'll get into that as we continue today's Locked On Falcons, guys. But before we get there, I got to plug the Locked On Podcast Network, giving you that 3 days of live coverage later this week, live from their studios in Dallas, giving you pick-by-pick analysis where local experts like myself will be joining them to break down the Falcons pick as well as all 31 NFL teams picks. So if you're tired of watching NFL Network or ESPN and having those guys not give the analysis of every single pick, by all means, Locked On will have you cover later this week, beginning on Thursday, April 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, on Facebook, on the Odyssey app, and everywhere else you can find Locked On Podcast. And as we continue today's episode, I also want to tell you guys about a product I've been using every single day for the last several months, and that's Athletic Greens, and their product is AG1. It's basically a multivitamin, but I don't have to take a million pills to get all my vitamins. It's just one scoop of AG1 with a cup of water first thing in the morning, and it starts my day off right. AG1 includes 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens, and a special blend of ingredients that's going to improve gut health, my nervous system, my immune system, boost my energy, boost my recovery, and boost my focus throughout the day. And you too can reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition with AG1. And making things easier, Athletic Greens is going to give you, once you purchase AG1 with your first purchase, a free year-long supply of immune-boosting vitamin D, as well as five free travel packs of AG1 with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NFL network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NFL network to take ownership of your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And guys, I also want to tell you that baseball is back. NBA playoffs are going strong, and of course, BetOnline is the number one source to have you covered for all those betting needs and sports info. You can find podcasts, the latest odds, player contests, as well as player props. BetOnline has it all. It's not just baseball, basketball. BetOnline has you covered boxing, UFC, golf, hockey, esports, your favorite Vegas casino games, and of course, your 2022 NFL draft props. I already put in a prop today for over under where Kayvon Thibodeau and Kenny Pickett would be picked. I had a mock draft yesterday that had Kayvon Thibodeau going fourth overall, but I saw the over 4.5, and I was like, the odds are too good. So just the chance that I'm wrong, which is probably a high probability that I'm wrong about that mock draft, I put a little bit of money down on Kayvon Thibodeau. So I win either way. I either get the mock draft right or I get a little bit of money on the side. Same thing with Kenny Pickett being, a potential top 10 pick or whatever the case may be. But you guys, if you feel good about those players or some other players, I mean, you can pretty much bet on any player. Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, Matt Corral, Drake London, Boye Mafe, whoever, where you think they'll go in the draft, whether Jameson Williams is going to be the first wide receiver selected. The Falcons have 9-1 odds of being the pick. The team that takes Malik Willis, same as the Detroit Lions. Whatever prop you're into, just head on over to the website at betonline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we'll continue today's Locked On Falcons podcast here with Jarvis Davis of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And we just talked about how important it is for this draft class to, for Terry Fontenot to nail this draft class, I should say. And I guess, Jarvis, now the question is, with 5 top 100 picks, you have 5 opportunities to get some solid starters as well as some impact players. Are there specific players that you're hoping to see this team land? I know you and Tanisha have been doing a mock draft these last couple of days on ATL Day Ones, or is it more, at least from my perspective, a vibe in terms of trying to nail certain positions, right? It may not be one guy for each position, but it's maybe if we can just nail this, there's maybe 2 or 3 guys that I would love to see the team pick. Sort of how are you looking at this draft, and what would you like to see when we're talking about this, this weekend, what do the Falcons come away with those top 5, top 100 picks?
You know what? And if I could just run down like the positions that I run down positions that I would like for them to draft, and then I kind of go through some guys that I've been kind of taking a look at and that I would like for them to check out. And I actually wouldn't mind if they double dipped as well. Specifically edge. Like edge, I have edge is my number one. That's my number one a position group as far as what I would like to see the Falcons go. I've been heavy on Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State, and just making sure that they get him on this team, because I feel like he'll be a guy that the Falcons haven't had in quite some time, like a John Abraham type guy, a guy that that you can count on 3rd and long, that he's going to be somewhere around smelling the quarterbacks behind, or he's going to be putting them on the ground. So I think that's the type of guy that the Falcons would need. And Lord knows, if they draft this position in the first round, I will lose my stuff. And more than likely, I'm probably going to, with all the reports that the Falcons have been eyeing the wide receivers, whatever that means. Everybody's been eyeing everybody. Like, I'm the type of guy, Aaron, that I'm not going to believe any report that comes out this week. I'm just going to say, oh, okay, all right, that's cool, and then just keep it moving. But I think the wide receiver position is a position I think that they need to take a look at in those first 100 picks, because there is a lot of talent, like up and down. When you think about guys like George Pickens being around in the 2nd round, a guy like Christian Watson, the wide receiver out of North Dakota State, those is just different types. Like you said, it's I like Terry Fontenot. I like the word that he used. There are a lot of different flavors of wide receivers out there that they do want, and I definitely think the Falcons should take a look at them. Another position that I think that the Falcons need to take a look at is interior defensive line. Here's why. Grady Jarrett's going into his last year of his contract, right? And it's just something in my gut that tells me something is going to happen. I'm not saying he's going to get traded, a draft night or anything like that, but it just something just doesn't smell right with me that we haven't heard anything about. We've heard something about contract negotiations, right? But no real hard, like, oh, okay, the Falcons offered this, and they came, Grady's camp came back with this, and we never heard anything specifics as to how those negotiations were going. They're just saying they've had them. So if they've had them, and we're going to go with that, right? That's what the reports were. If they've had those negotiations, then like why isn't there one done? Isn't that going to help them financially? Free up some money to be able to sign all of their draft picks and and be able to have some emergency cash going into the season. Isn't that what that's for? So I believe that going forward, that eventually you're going to have to either draft Grady's replacement or draft a guy to play alongside him. So that's why I believe interior defensive line is something they should take a look at. Also, interior offensive line. Like I said, I want a full-on competition at the center and guard position this summer. There should not be any guarantees of starting positions for Matt Hennessy and Jalen Mayfield. Those guys need to compete. They need to beat somebody of some type of ilk, somebody who has proven that they can play football. They need to be able to beat those guys out. And if not, the Falcons will have to just move on accordingly, because sitting there Sunday and watching guys just run stunts and just have sack parties and just line up. Hey man, like, I'll pay you $500 if you let me line up over Mayfield in this play, man. It just seems like they were just having a good old party every Sunday at 1:00, man, and it just got tiring watching that. So, and my last position group that I believe the Falcons should address is running back, because I think there are a lot of good backs that you can pick up right there on the edge of the third round. And then with the Falcons having two picks in the third round, I'm sure they'll be able to find somebody that they really, really like in one of those third round picks.
Yeah, I'm of a similar mindset. Like, for me, I would love to come away from this draft with 3 front 7 players. I say front 7 because I want one of those to be an edge rusher.
Indeed.
And then what the other 2 are I don't care. Interior line, another edge rusher, a linebacker. Just like, get me 3 guys that I can sit here and say that, and you talk about Grady Jarrett and his long-term future here. But at the very least, we can say, okay, for at least the year that Grady Jarrett is going to play here in Atlanta, hopefully he'll play more. But if he only has one more year, at least give him 3 decent options alongside him, which you don't necessarily know if you have right now up front. I want to have something at the quarterback position. I don't want to go into another year with, I don't want to go into the summer with Marcus Mariota and Felipe Franks atop the depth chart, right? Whether that means taking a quarterback in round 1 or round 2, or it doesn't really matter to me. I feel like you'll have an opportunity to get somebody at some point in the top, 4 rounds that can come in and give you something, right? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing for that 5th top 100 pick is another offensive piece. And I'm leaning, like you, to an interior offensive lineman, someone that can come in and be a quality left guard for this team, give a challenger to Jalen Mayfield, potentially dethrone Jalen Mayfield, and hopefully get better play out of that position. That's ideally for me. If that draft doesn't fall that way, then so be it. I'll take a wide receiver. I'll take a running back. I'll take another tight end. I'm fine with any of those other positions, but ideally it would be a left guard for me in terms of what I would like to see out of those 5 top 100 picks. But certainly, I feel like getting some answers in the defensive front, to me, is probably the priority for me, and getting some pieces that you can say, okay, again, no one's going to sit here and be like, oh man, Curtis Lofton was a superstar here in Atlanta, but he was a solid linebacker for you for 4 years that you could get reliable production out of for 4 seasons. And like that, to me, is the type of pieces I would love to see this team add if they can't obviously add some big time difference makers.
Yeah, and that's all you can ask for, right? Because like I said, when you talk about getting multiple guys on that defensive front, the Falcons need bodies, man. Like they not only just need bodies, they need guys who can come in and play for cheap. They need cheap labor. I mean, I hate to put it like that, but that's essentially what you need, because you look at the free agency class, like you said, 1 year, 2 year, like that's all you see, and I put too many 2 years in there. Mostly is 1 year deals, because they don't have any money. That's like when you're a cash-strapped team, you have to draft well. That's why they were able to survive down in New Orleans. I hate to mention that the name of that team on this Locked On Falcons podcast because hey, it's all about Falcons all day. But I have to point out the fact that the reason why they were able to survive, being in salary captivity, and competing for Super Bowl somehow, like they drafted really well. They had those franchise changing type drafts, and that's it. That's like I said, we talked about it earlier. Like Terry Fontenot has to hit in this draft because, he has to establish himself. Because Thomas Dimitroff established himself as the guy. When he drafted Matt Ryan, and it ended up working out because that's why he was able to stick around for so long because he drafted the face of the franchise. That's why Arthur Blank gave him a little grace and probably fired him a year too late because he drafted Matt Ryan. He drafted the guy, the most successful quarterback in Falcons franchise history, the guy who's going to go down probably as the best Falcon in franchise history. So I think that when you have those type of situations going down, Fontenot, has to look at it from the standpoint of, hey, this is what I have to do, and I got to get this right. No pressure though.
Very little pressure. So we'll talk a little bit more about what the Falcons should do in round one, since that's obviously going to be always the focus heading into Thursday night. We'll get Jarvis's thoughts on that, as well as what should their plan be at the quarterback position, the most important position on the football field. And we'll get into all of that as we continue today's Locked On Falcons podcast. But since I have Jarvis here, of course, I got to plug the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast feed. Jarvis, as I've mentioned earlier, is a co-host of the ATL Day Ones with Tanitra Batiste, one of 3 different shows, comprehensive Atlanta, Georgia sports coverage on the Locked On Sports Atlanta podcast feed. You can find ATL Day Ones. You can find Hitting Hard with John Chuckery, as well as A to Z with Mark Zeno, all on the same feed. And Locked On Sports Atlanta is free and available on the same podcast platforms you can find Locked On Falcons, including Apple, Odyssey, Google, and Spotify, as well as YouTube. And guys, I also want to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With ever increasing numbers of makes and models, it's possible. It's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts that you need. Why wait while the person behind the counter orders parts on their computer when you already have a computer with access to rockauto.com at home or in your pocket? Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Instead of spending up to twice as much for the same parts at a chain store or car dealership, Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years, and they have reliably low prices for every customer. They have everything you need, including brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, new carpet, whatever you want. You get a new tailgate, you get a new spoiler, you can get anything you want at rockauto.com right now with their easy-to-use website, and you can see all the parts available for your car or truck. And when you head on over to rockauto.com, make sure you write Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need, rockauto.com. So here with Jarvis Davis of ATL Day Ones podcast on Locked On Sports Atlanta. We talked about sort of the overall haul that the Falcons need to get from this draft class. But, everybody's going to judge them based off of what they do in round one, right?
Of course, yeah. The entire draft.
Yeah. So, if they hit that pick, then people will be like, great draft. If they don't hit that pick, then everybody's like, this is the worst draft that's ever happened in history.
Ever, yeah.
So I guess the question for me is, you've already mentioned Jermaine Johnson. He's a guy that I think certainly should be on the radar at pick number 8. What do you hope that the Falcons nab, or who they nab at that 8th overall selection?
You know what? Like I said, I love Johnson, but here's the thing that I wouldn't mind happening. If Malik Willis is sitting right there, and that's the guy that the Falcons have tabbed as their favorite guy, they're the best guy that, on a board, you always talk about best player available, right? And he's sitting right there in the making, and you decided that Malik Willis is a guy that can lead your franchise, and I think he is, because like I said, just from just being around him down at the Senior Bowl and just learning more and talking to some people that covered him while he was at Liberty, it just seems like the perfect fit, right? You know, he's from the Atlanta area. I'm not saying he's from Atlanta, you know, because I'm not gonna lie to you people out there in Locked On Falcons land, because you know a lot of people get a little sensitive about those type of things. But I think that this is a guy that it would be the perfect scenario because of Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota can be, you know, the starter. That's fine. I have no problem with that. You can be patient with him. You can give him a year to learn Arthur Smith's system and be the guy to get a year under his belt. Because, like we've talked about this before, the Falcons are going to have a lot of money next year under the salary cap. Once all this dead money, all this dead weight comes off, the Falcons are going to have some money to spend next year. So I know a lot of people may not like how it sounds when I say it, but this is a year where it's a year of growth. Let's just use that. You know, this is the reconstruction era. It's not a rebuild. It's a reconstruction era for the Falcons as an organization. So, you know, if Marcus Mariota can play his way into being a viable starter, and that might not necessarily be here, you know, if he goes out and plays well this year, maybe there's a team that can take a chance on him and say, hey, he can probably be our starter for the next couple of years. But I think Malik Willis would serve him well to get a year under his belt and not be thrust in as into that starting role in his rookie year, because that would just be a bad look. Because if the Falcons stay there okay with a guy like Jalen Mayfield, Matt Hennessy coming back as starters on the offensive line, it's going to be a long year. And you don't want to – we've seen how rookie quarterbacks come in and they just get beat up, and some of them never recover.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting conversation that they're going to have. And as I've said before, it feels like they'll probably go quarterback at 8, or they'll go best defensive player available, which I think will probably be an edge rusher like Jermaine Johnson. But saying that means they go in a completely different direction. They take a wide receiver, right? So that's usually how it goes, right?
I mean, why? I mean, my whole thing is like, for a lot. I mean, a lot of times, like, you know, like I like to think that I know football, right? You know, I figure I can look at a guy who at least plays defensive line and say, you know what, that dude might be all right in the NFL. But it just seems like the Falcons have always, over the years, figured out a way to draft a person that the entire fan base didn't expect. And I'm sitting up here like, okay. I mean, Kyle Pitts, there were some reports come out like right before the draft last year with Kyle Pitts. Okay, barring that one, but before then, you're talking about Keanu Neal. Nobody saw that coming, and you know, even Calvin Ridley, right up to the pick was made, everybody was like, oh yeah, they're gonna get Taven Bryan, you know, the edge guy coming out for them, and who ended up going to the Jaguars and disappeared into oblivion, and I don't even know if he's still on the team anymore. But you know, I think that there's always been an interesting dynamic with when it comes to who the Falcons draft, because they always seem to find people that don't necessarily people weren't expecting, and that's why my stomach kind of turns, because, like I said, I just got a feeling it might be Garrett Wilson, man. Like I don't care for drafting Calvin Ridley's replacement right now. Like, can we worry about that next year when he's on the salary cap and you got to figure out and trade, get a pick for it, and take that pick and replace Calvin Ridley? You know you got a pick coming back next year, so yeah, take that pick, Terry. Please, can you do that for me? Just please. I'm up here begging. I'm begging a grown man to not draft a wide receiver, Aaron. I don't know how we got here, but, man, here we are, man. I'm sorry, man. Please forgive me.
Well, that's just a preview of my reaction if they do wind up taking a wide receiver for Friday morning. So definitely,
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you, brother. Like, whatever alcohol you drink, man, I'm gonna take one for you, and I'll figure out what your favorite is, and I'll send it up your way, man. Because, man, good Lord, both of us gonna need a drink if they draft wide receiver with at number 8.
All right. Well, Jarvis, we'll leave it at that. We'll just save that to hopefully never. But
right, exactly. Please, Terry.
let the people know, what you and Tanisha will be talking about ATL Day Ones, as well as what, John and Mark also got covered on Locked On Sports Atlanta.
Man, we are going to be continuing our ATL Day Ones mock draft. We're going to be doing we did our 4th round pick today, and we'll be doing our 5th round pick leading up to the draft, and of course we'll get the 6th round, because I like I said, I believe there's a lot of value in the bottom part of these of the NFL draft. So they're just as important. Like, if you can find a special team guy to get going, we're gonna do that. So yeah, make sure you check us out on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Like and subscribe, man, and we're a continuation of the Locked On Falcons podcast. So hey, man, just to go check us out there. And we'll try to give you as much as entertaining and whining and complaining as you can possibly take on ATL Day Ones with Jarvis and Tanisha.
Well, I don't know if Locked On Falcons listeners can take any more complaining than what I give.
Right.
But, you could bring it definitely in the entertainment department. So that's going to do it for us guys here on Locked On Falcons. Appreciate Jarvis. I'm sure we'll be talking with Jarvis in a couple of days to see his reaction to this draft and whether the Falcons live up to those expectations, or, as they often do, fall short of those expectations.
I'm too big to cry in public, Aaron. I'm too big to cry in public, man. Come on, Terry, please. So,
if you guys want to provide your feedback on what you would like to see sort of the haul be from this draft class, of course, you can always hit me up on Twitter at Locked On Falcons, on Facebook at Locked On Falcons. You can leave it comment here on Locked On Falcons on the YouTube, or you can send an email to lockedonfalcons@mail.com. Don't know what we'll be doing tomorrow, but I'm sure we'll be draft related. So that's the plan here on Locked On Falcons. Appreciate it, guys. Hope you have a great day. Until then.